Inaugurated on the 21st of April, the birthday of the foundation of Rome, Brasilia was designed to be a symbol of a new future for Brazil. Built in just 1,000 days under the leadership of President Juscelino Kubitschek, the city was supposed to attract economic development to the centre of the country, far from the coastal cities of Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo. But more than that, Brasilia represented a new social order, a political project, socialist, based on egalitarian ideas, a modern city forged in concrete. A utopia which would give access to housing, the creation of work and social integration. It was designed by the urban planner Lucio Costa and the architect Oscar Niemeyer.
What matters is that we create a system that can help others. That's the problem, that's the political struggle. It's to make a better, more fraternal world.
An incarnation of modern architecture, Brasilia has divided opinion. Yet, in 1987, it was classified as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, ensuring its place in architectural history and ensuring its protection. But what has become of the values and visions of its original builders? What remains of their ideas, of the promise of a better life in a city built for 500,000 inhabitants, which now hosts 3 million, in a country shaken by social change and a crisis of confidence amid its political class? Well, Nicholas Ransom revisits Brasilia for France 24.
I brought you something special. This is the only copy. It was taken in 1958. This is where the Congress building was built. Here I am, Claudio Nor, and that's another Candango. We called him Chico the Drunkard. I don't know if he's still alive. What you see over there, that's the site that would become the National Congress.
Only a few of the thousands of men who built Brasilia are still around today. Pedro Claudio Nor is one of them. They were known as Candangos.
If I had to build everything anew, I would do the same. It was very rewarding, a wonderful time. Wonderful, a marvel. Brasilia means everything to me.
Claudio Nor built these walls with his own hands.
There were huge earthworks here, tractors everywhere. Everywhere. No buildings, nothing. Just tractors in the red dust, especially where the ministries were to be built. And here, where the National Congress is located, nothing but mounds of earth.
Cujo eixo monumental é constituído por conjunto de amplas avenidas e esplanadas.
It's a city that sprang from the imagination of former Brazilian President Juscelino Kubitschek and modernist architect Oscar Niemeyer. This vision in concrete continues to enthrall and appall. For our visit to Brasilia, we took a journey back in time, hopping in a Volkswagen named in honor of the city.
The city is vast. Wherever you look, you see the horizon. It's a city that works, that is moving forward. There is no congestion here.
Journalist Daniel Zucco is a Brasilia-phile. He's passionate about his city. He conducts interviews driving around in his Volkswagen. His show is called My Brasilia.
The idea of a show in this car is mainly to express the feelings that people have for Brasilia. We use a car that represents the city, with a sentimental history, a vehicle that means something for people, that has a story to tell. It is a Brasilia that drives around Brasilia. This show talks about Brasilia and very often features people from Brasilia.
Here is a city without traffic lights, with cars constantly in motion, bridges, tunnels, slip roads. It's enough to make you feel dizzy. The street names, carefully thought out acronyms that are incomprehensible to visitors. This ambitious project aimed to centralize the country's power in one place and to make it accessible to the people.
Here the population has access to power. The National Congress has no railings. The Planalto Palace, where the president works, has none either. Of course you need to be accredited to enter, but there are no barriers. People can get close to and even touch power. It's great that two architects, Luis Costa and Oscar Niemeyer, imagined all this, that citizens must have access to power.
In Brasilia, the center of power is in with arm's reach. It appears close enough to touch. Yet, as hundreds of protesters who gather outside the National Congress building every day will tell you, that is just an illusion. We want justice, end corruption. Brasilia is boiling over. The people's cries echo across the city. What was supposed to be its strength has now turned against it.
Brasilia is very far from the major Brazilian centers. It's difficult to get people here because it's far. From Sao Paulo, from Rio, it's far from the south, the north. Brasilia has become an island.
Brasilia is politically hypersensitive. Every day there are political debates in the ministries with a plethora of civil servants. It's a concentration of power, a real political pressure cooker.
At this protest, we meet Fernando. His group of activists has made history. They are the first ever protesters to camp out on the lawn of the Congress building. They've been there for a month.
Today our movement is calling for the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff. We believe that it's only when the president goes Brazil will really change.
Fernando is from a working-class family in Sao Paulo. In the 60s, hope and optimism brought people to Brasilia. Now Fernando is here to express his anger and disgust.
As far as I'm concerned, Brasilia is letting the country down. It tries to take care of everyone, but in the end it takes care of nobody. And nobody knows what's going on there. I often say it's a city in the desert, forgotten by God and by the citizens. In reality, the Brazilian people are not interested in what's happening there and are disillusioned when they do know.
It's 5 a.m. Antonia just missed her bus. She's been doing this commute for a decade. She lives on the outskirts of Brasilia, in a satellite town far from the center of power.
You live that far? Oh my God, that's hard. At what time do you leave home?
5:05.
Like hundreds of thousands of workers, Antonia feels marginalized. She belongs to the class that serves the elite.
To start, we don't have the same privileges as people who live in the center. There they have health insurance. They live close to work. They don't endure what we live, an hour and a half, 2 hours of travel. Our life is very different. We don't have half of what they have.
The capital is growing 3 times faster than any other city in Brazil. It was originally designed for 400,000 people. By 2030, the population is expected to reach 5.6 million, 15 times more than that originally envisaged by urban planner Lucio Costa. Low-income families continue to pour in. The city is overflowing and saturated. After an hour and a half on the road, Maria's on the last leg of her journey with a connection at Brazil's biggest bus station.
We'll wait for the bus. It's already full. We'll take the other one.
Finding the right coach among the 316 bus lines and making your way through a crowd of 500,000 commuters is a real obstacle. If Brasilia only has 2 metro lines, it clearly needs more.
All this in the city will end in conflict, and the day will come when there will be a revolution. Social networks are already evoking it. It's going to happen soon.
Sociologist Elimar Nascimento is an expert on Brasilia. He believes the government must act to avoid the worst.
If things continue this way, we will face an explosive situation with poor and discriminated workers who have a strong feeling of injustice. There is an increasing perception that inequalities in the country, and especially here in Brasilia, are unfair.
After a 2-hour journey, Antonia finally starts her day at work. Meanwhile, in Lago Sul, one of Brazil's most exclusive neighborhoods, João Amaral, a successful real estate agent in Brasilia, is starting a very different day. In this neighborhood, the GDP per capita is equivalent to that of Denmark.
This bridge is really beautiful. It's one of the postcard views of Brasilia. The Juscelino Kubitschek Bridge and the lake are a real beauty.
The original project was supposed to be egalitarian. This artificial lake was meant to be for everyone, but rich owners have made it theirs. Palm trees, luxury mansions hidden behind high walls. You'd think you were in Hollywood.
A house like this costs between 1 and 2 million, maybe even 3 million euros. That's the going price for such a house.
Despite the devastating economic crisis, the luxury real estate market is still buoyant here. This house, for example, is going to be leased to a diplomat. The rent, 6,000 euros a month.
While in the sauna, there's a system that allows direct access to the pool. The slot's here, and you go directly into the pool.
People living in Lago Sul make 19 times more than those living in the poorest neighborhood of Brasilia. These pools and private gardens illustrate how removed the capital is today from the egalitarian city imagined 55 years ago. 10 kilometers from the center, the other face of the city, Santa Luzia, Brazil's newest favela, a field of shacks made of corrugated iron and recycled materials. 10 new families arrive here in this wasteland every day. The state is unable to control the constant flow of immigration. For these Brazilians, the dream of an El Dorado is already far behind.
Boy, it's miserable here.
Luciano lives here in this corrugated iron shack with his 4 children.
Brasilia is now a chaos that no one imagines. There's lots of money, but not for the poor. There's nothing. Many people who come from the northeast finally leave empty-handed because they have nothing. It's easier to live where they come from. Here, it's getting worse every day.
The inhabitants of Santa Luzia make do thanks to an association called LIVE. This morning, Irene and Daniel are visiting parents who are at their wits' end. They can't afford to feed their children.
This community is totally abandoned. People must fend for themselves. And all this because there's no housing policy. But people need to find a roof, no matter how.
With inexistent public services, the favela depends on private donors.
Hello, how are things? Great to see you.
João Amaral, the real estate agent, knows this association well. His Rotary Club paid for the renovation of this sports centre.
Most of these children have been saved from the environment they grew up in. And now they spend the day here, they do their homework, they've got cultural activities, and it provides further support to this community.
Juscelino Kubitschek's dream failed to materialize. For many, this capital has become a cracked utopia. But Daniel and Claudio Nor still cling to the ideal of a magical city.
que eu peço como candango, como criador dessa cidade, trabalhador dessa cidade desde o início, é que o nosso povo seja mais solidário, seja mais amigo, que Brasília seja diferente, que Brasília continue sendo como era antigamente.
O senhor ainda ama a cidade?
Essa cidade eu amo de coração. Eu amo de coração. Isso aqui para mim é a minha vida. Brasília para mim é a minha vida. E é a minha vida.
Seu Claudionor, muitíssimo obrigado pelo papo. E eu devo confessar que eu sou candango. A cidade não está pronta. Eu me considero um construtor da cidade porque a gente ainda está fazendo Brasília acontecer. E eu agradeço de verdade a coragem.
Obrigado, filho. Obrigado, filho.
De o senhor ter vindo fazer a minha cidade.
Obrigado, filho. Hoje eu ganhei o dia.
What do Daniel's tears betray, hopes or fears? Perhaps both. He still wants to believe in his dream, and Brasilia is, for many, an inspiration.
Nicholas Ransom revisiting Brasilia for France 24. But that's all from this week's edition. You can catch it again and all the previous editions on our website. That's france24.com. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more.